Good evening. Welcome to Face-to-Face Soumyajit third episode. And you are well aware that you are going to be a living legend in public relations. A person who has a staying power in this profession for the last 50 years. She was the first news anchor of Doordarshan from Kolkata. She has been in the media profession for the last 17 years. And if I tell so many things right now, you may lose interest because it's a change maker show and a person of Rita Bhimani's stature is here today. But before I thank Rita Bhimani, I must acknowledge that in spite of her personal and irreparable loss in the family, Kishore Bhimani, our beloved Kishore Da, is no more. And Kishore Da not only respected his profession, also encouraged Rita Bhimani to take his profession ahead of everything. And today, Rita Bhimani is with us. And before we start the show, we will have a short journey of audiovisual on Rita Bhimani. Let's play the audiovisual.
Rita has been at the forefront of the industry since her early days. She has always authored books that delve into the ins and outs of the industry. With a unique insight and the eagerness to spread her knowledge, she has played a crucial part in the careers of many young individuals and professionals in the industry. She never misses out on an opportunity to interact with the next generation and help them realize the power of effective and creative communication. But it is not just them. As an erstwhile member of the board of directors for the acclaimed International Peer Association, she dedicated her time to peer educators with the ever-changing needs of the industry. Her list of accolades is just a glimpse into the kind of genius she is: an educator, a leader, an innovator, and a change maker.
Thank you, Rita Ji.
Thank you, Shomo. Thank you so much. That's a lovely introduction. That's quite a surprise also.
Yeah. We have tried our level best. Being in the profession for only a few years, I have learned so many things from you, and I got your blessings in this profession. So it is a show of change makers. And people asked me, how you invited Rita Bhimani? I told them, a person who has a prime mover in the public relations, not only in the national area, not only in Eastern India, but in the international area. A person represented IPRA in a very important position. And today we will be discussing so many things in the show. The first question will obviously go, what influenced you and who are the people, who are the influencers in your life to start this public relation journey? Rita.
Okay, that's a lovely question to start with. The first influence really was, I think, by a process of osmosis, I would say, because my father was the person, the late P.N. Mukherjee. He started the public relations department in Jamshedpur for Tata Steel. So I was seeing from my early years as a child how Tata Steel was projected to the rest of the world as an industrial showpiece, something that was not only making steel, but it was also looking after the people who worked for it. So from a very early stage, one could see something that we're talking about today. We're talking about CSR and so on. But it was the foresight of Jamshedji Narsarwanji Tata who actually thought of this kind of a complete township. I just need my backup battery, so I'm just sending for that. You know, these things also happen. So that was how it started. I started seeing how he grew the public relations department, how he started house journals for the company, how he took part in exhibitions and so on. That was the early influence. And I think that stayed with me. So it's not as if I wanted to jump into the profession of PR right away, even after my graduation, but it was probably the most natural thing to do. And then there were various other influences too. Some of the greats like R.P. Gupta, Jolly Mohan Kaul, Anil Basu, Monishankar Mukherjee, and of course Shonot Lahiri, who became the first Indian to become the International Public Relations Association chief. I think that was a very, very big step that happened in his time. And we learned a lot from Shonot Lahiri because he was something of a grassroots person. He didn't believe in pursuing public relations the way we are making our students pursue public relations, in the sense that they're all studying for 3 years and then getting internships and so on. He just had a gut feel about what communication in industry ought to be. So these are some of the influences. These were the influences in India. But if you want me to also talk about the influences from outside the country internationally, there were people like Professor Sam Black, who dedicated his whole life to public relations. He wrote the foreword to my first book on PR, actually. That was wonderful. And then there was a very interesting man called Edward Bernays. We talk about him as being the father of public relations. And I had the fortune of meeting him a couple of times, but the last time I ever met him was when he was 99 years old. And this was at a public relations conference in Toronto. And he was all there. He just knew what he was talking about. He knew what he was talking about when he talked about his years in India, when he had come and he had met Indira Gandhi and so on. So if you're talking about staying power, I think those guys had a lot of staying power.
Right. Already, Rita, you know this is the Changemaker show, and I know that you were also in the making of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, a person we did not discuss about his doings, but during this Raja Ram Mohan Roy filmmaking journey, how did you feel to do the filming of a Changemaker?
That's again another very good question. I came to it again quite by accident. Lots of things happen to you accidentally. And this was commissioned by the Ministry of External Affairs. They wanted various people to do films on various change makers, important people. And it fell on my lot to do Raja Ram Mohan Roy, which was perfect because I'm from the Brahmo Samaj, and one has obviously grown up knowing all about his reforms and what he stood for. So perhaps it was the most natural thing to do again, to want to make this film on him. A lot of research went into it. And finally, I found that I'm not a filmmaker. Let me ask somebody like Gautam Ghosh to make the film. So the concepts were mine, and they were joint concepts, and Gautam Ghosh went ahead and made the film. So we tried and brought out not just his social reforms, which everybody knows about, the abolition of sati and so on, but also how the West took him to be such an intellectual, and how he could shine there as much as he could do in his own country. And he was a linguist. He was so many, many things. People know all about him, but to be actually able to put it in a film was very, very satisfying. And we actually had the premiere at Nehru Center in London.
Exactly. Actually, if you want to know about Rita Bhimani's work within 60 minutes, I think it's not, we are doing justice. But one question comes to my mind. A person of his stature, her stature, I'm committing mistakes again and again, her stature and age, nobody says that Rita Bhimani of this age. How you get the youthfulness, inspiration encouragement? How? And how? What is your passion? Does it drive to encourage you in all these things, doings?
I think, Soumyajit, you have to be self-motivated. You have to want to keep going. And I feel that I have a certain routine in my life, which is physical also. You've got to rise early, you've got to exercise, walk. I think physical fitness plays a very important role in your mental makeup. That is there. Then you have to have your variety of interests. Apart from the work one has been doing, I started my consultancy company maybe way back in uh, 1991, which was the
Yes.
year of liberalization. So it was an interesting year, really, to start. I'll come back to that. Uh, but all along, one had to do other things. Writing is my passion, and I have been a columnist for various publications. That also gives you an outlet. It also gives you a chance to go and interview people, to write about a variety of subjects, whether it is food or art or lifestyle or many other things.
Eating
That
out.
is one. Yes, I started an eating out column in Telegraph the year Telegraph started. Uh,
1985.
yes, the thing is that you've got to have that passion. And my other little outlet is, of course, playing the piano. And I'm still continuing with my lessons. And now, actually, there are online lessons. So that is something that is a challenge. But I think it's something that makes you feel very happy, makes you feel relaxed, makes you go into another plane when you can commune with all these various famous composers and the way they express themselves. So I may be playing a Mozart one day and a Beethoven another day, or Chopin another time. So all these things give one great joy, not only just to play, but also to listen to good music.
Right. I already told Rita Bhimani, in this profession of education for the last 17 years. And my obvious question is, Rita Bhimani practicing for last 50 years, and education system in the media education is not that much advanced according to my personal opinion. And people may differ, the educators may differ, the practitioners may differ. We are in the traditional old system of curriculum. So, do you think that you could change some of the thought leaders of education who are framing all this curriculum?
We have to do that. We did try from the beginning to tweak the syllabus as much as we could. And although we had to follow a certain pattern in the syllabus, the way my husband and I, for instance, taught our students, it was really out of the box teaching. We would uh, naturally talk from our experience, because that's what students want. You don't have to carry papers. You don't have to make it very bookish. You've just got to make them feel involved and alive, and feel that if we could do it, they could also do it. So this is the system that we followed in trying to teach them, so to say. The other thing that has happened over the years is that some of the syllabus content has evolved, and we're trying to make a lot of people do internships. You yourself have done this program called Beyond the Classroom, where students have come and they have been exposed to industry leaders. I think that has been a very vital change. So these are the various means by which we're trying to get students to be able to be industry ready. Everyone can't get an internship immediately, but we've tried. We've tried to place them in a lot of situations, and they've gone out and done it. And I can tell you, there are a lot of our students who have really done extremely well for themselves. People to whom we can turn to now and say, okay, can you do this for me? Can you help me in this? So the shoe is on the other foot.
Uh, Definitely, you were in the change-making process of education, the student's mind, I know. We have been talking about some people impacting your life. And I know there is a Minu factor who impacted your life. So if you can say something about three Minus in your life, or what impacted, something influenced you.
Very interesting, actually, that these three Minus came into my life at different times. One was Dr. Minu Dastur, M.N. Dastur. And we knew him from when we were children. He lived a very simple life, but he grew to huge, great heights. He became an international steel consultant. He founded M.N. Dastur and Company. But in the early years, I used to see him interact with my parents, particularly with my father, because my father used to teach German to the various engineers who would go to Germany. And when Dr. Dastur saw this, he said, PN, why don't you come and translate some of the stuff for me? Because I deal with Germany quite a lot. So there was a very real friendship between my father and Dr. Dastur. And in later years, when I used to walk at CCFC, Dr. Dastur would come. He would walk with many of us. We would all try to take turns to talk to him. And the fund of knowledge that we would receive from him at that time was quite incredible. I told him, may I write your book for you? He said, oh, we'll think about it. No, that's not important. So I never got to write that book on him. But there he was. Look at the span of years from when I was a child to see him grow. And he admired both my parents, my mother particularly. He used to tell me, oh, she was a charming lady and she wrote so well. She was such a good speaker. And it's lovely to hear all this from people who are not your family, but people also whom you admire. Then the other two Minus, there was Minu Rustamji, who was a management consultant. And we came across his books on management. They were hilariously illustrated by this gentleman who would exaggerate the figures that were in the book. And we came to know about what management out of the box thinking was from Minu Rustamji. He used to be a very, very proper gentleman. He always wore a bow tie and he talked in this very haw-haw manner. We also came very close to him. The third Minu was Minu Masani. Minu Masani, the firebrand leader. And again, I struck up a very good friendship with him. He actually invited me, along with a whole lot of journalists, to the Udaipur Lake Palace Hotel to talk about the Minorities Commission. And I was the rapporteur for that. What an amazing experience that was. And ever since then, he also inspired us to think about voluntary euthanasia. And ever since then, one has written a lot about it, followed what it was all about. He himself practiced it. And that was Minu Masani for you. Again, a lovely gentleman whom one came to know in one's later years. So you could interact with him as an adult, as someone who loved the finer things in life. So these were the three Minus at different stages of life.
So it's a nice, interesting story for us. And I think every person needs confidence and certain factors in life. And it happened in Rita Bhimani's life also. I was going through the life stage of Rita Bhimani and I have listed 5 points. And the first point is confidence. And I will remind Rita Bhimani that did she gain confidence after returning from USA, joined the Jamshedpur Flying Club and completed 10 hours of flying a Pushpa? I don't know whether it is right or wrong, but it happened. Now it is Rita Bhimani's turn to say, yes, it's changed her life to something.
Yes, you've really been digging quite a bit, haven't you, Shomo? Yes, that was a very quirky beginning for me after I came back from the States. Actually, The gaining of confidence, let me tell you, did happen when I went to USA, to the University of Georgia. And it was very different for someone who led a completely, in a way, sheltered life, in the sense that one had never been out of the country. I had done my studies in Loretto House, and I had stayed in a hostel. So we were not even allowed to go out of college. We would go from the fourth floor to the third floor to study and go back to the fourth floor and maybe first floor to the dining room. So to that extent, sheltered. And then suddenly this opportunity came, the scholarship came from USA. And once I went there, I realized that the one thing that the Americans urge you to do and teach you to do and encourage you to do is to think for yourself, to think differently, and to talk in a more confident manner. Because before that, if I did a book review, I would consult a lot of books, which was the norm in India. But when I went there and I wrote my first review, the professor said, no, I want you to talk about how you see the book and how you view it. I don't want anybody else's views. You don't have to go to the library and do your reference. And that's how I realized that an independent thinking grew. So to come back to this little story about when I came back, I joined the flying club in Jamshedpur, and I actually started flying a pushpak. Did 10 hours of it. I don't think I was all that good at it, but it was a challenge. And you had to land the pushpak on that air strip where there used to be cows crossing the strip. So it was a challenge, but flying high, literally, did give one an iota of confidence. Yes, it did.
Yes. So that is a confession from Changemaker. So if you want to change yourself, have confidence and do something daring, something challenging to have more confidence. And we will have a 20 seconds break and we will come back once again.
Namaskar. Soumyajit welcomes you to Face Soumyajit. If you like our show, please visit Face Soumyajit, like it and share it. Also, subscribe our YouTube channel iCommunications. Press the bell icon to get instant notifications.
Thank you, lovely audience, for watching our shows, and we are getting good response. This is our third episode. So I will come back to another points of the 5 points I've jotted down for Rita Bhimani. The second is entrepreneurship. Rita Bhimani, 50 years practicing PR consultant, but he never went to anybody's chamber to get work. People approached her. So that is entrepreneurship skill. And she preached the same thing in others' minds. That if you do good work, if you have knowledge, if you can change the minds of organization hierarchy, if you can change the mindset of people working there, then work will automatically come to your end. So what is your take on this entrepreneurship from 1991? It happened to my year of marriage also.
That's a good one. Yes, I don't think I ever wanted to be an entrepreneur as such. I was so comfortable being part of a big multinational. I started my career with the tea board, did 3 years of that. We did a lot of promotion of Indian tea around the world. And then I went on to this other multinational, Indian Aluminium. And I loved my time there because there were so many different things to be done at that time. And these were early years of PR, remember. So we were still trying to find our feet. We were trying to see what were the things that we should be doing in order to plan strategy, to build the image of the company, and so on. So that happened for a length of time. But you know what happens? 18 years was a long time to be in one company. And somehow I couldn't imagine that I would go on and then get a 25-year watch as as a milestone gift, and go on and on. So at some stage, I discussed with my husband. I said, uh, do you think one could start something on one's own? And by that time, I had actually been going to a lot of international PR conferences, and I found that many of the people whom I met were consultants rather than people working for companies. So I did ask them, what is it about PR consultancy? What exactly do you do? What is the structure? Why do you do it? And they were so good. They actually sent all their structures to me. They shared a lot of stuff. And one fine day, I said, let's take a plunge into the icy waters. Let's leave the comfort of this company. They didn't want to leave me. They were so wonderful, the company. They said, why do you want to go out into the big bad world? And I said, well, let me go. Let me try. Let me have a bash at it. And it worked out very well. I didn't really start. I just was sitting around thinking, okay, now exactly how shall I structure it? When I got a phone call from someone from a printing press. And he said, my name is so and so, and I'd like you to start a magazine for us. I thought the person was joking. I said this was up so much off my street that somebody must be just taking me for a ride. I said, well, I don't know you, but would you like to come and see me? And he did. And he turned out to be the owner of Anderson Printing, the same people whom we went to later for lots and lots of good printing work, including for my latest book on Muga, which they printed. But to go back to that year, 91, this gentleman came to the house and he said, this is what we want you to do. And it was a fortnightly magazine on the printing industry. It was so exciting, I can't tell you, doing research for it, writing the whole magazine, getting other people to write it, designing it. It was really wonderful. So that's how it started. And he asked me to quote a price. I quoted, and he paid more than what I asked for. That's the first thing. I couldn't believe that people actually pay you more than what you quote. Good start, very good start. And then, as you yourself were mentioning, people started coming. It was word of mouth and work started coming. So one really never had to approach anybody. But the work was hugely varied. That was the excitement. Instead of being with one company, you were dealing with so many situations. And that's what I feel that entrepreneurs today, when they come into this, their own fields, they should also be looking at the challenges that they can face. And I faced many challenges. I hadn't really dealt with finance, with trying to employ others who would come into the fold, and they did. A lot of young people came, they learned on the job, and then I let them fly out to bigger jobs. But they learned, and I learned, and it was a joint learning process. And I also learned the hard way. I learned that you have to take the rap for everything you do. You can't say that, oops, somebody else bungled this job. No, you have to say, I did it. And I did something which was wrong. And you had to actually take the responsibility for something that maybe a junior had done.
So, Rita Bhimani, I will take a U-turn on the whole conversation. I will take you back through a time capsule machine 50 years. It is 1970, and you have to tell your perspective about public relations those days.
How different public relations was then from what it is today. Really, things have changed so much. I never thought actually that I would stay so long in public relations. You know, when you start, you keep going and going and going and going. So what I have found over the years is that we found that we had to start taking public relations to another level. We started seeing that public relations must get into the boardroom, that we must become the people who are the change makers. We must become the voice of the company, not just someone who is carrying out work for the company, but be able to be uh, the people whom the chairman turns to, the managing director turns to for advice, to be able to take the whole journey forward for brand building. So it went from just nuts and bolts PR to brand building. And then we have come a very long way now in these last 10 years where things have gone digital. It scared me a lot, scared the hell out of me to see how people were going digital, they were using the social media, and I wasn't sure this was the right way to do it. So I had to also educate myself. I had to go to turn to younger people to see what are the solutions they found. And one of the things I have to tell you, Shomo, that although we have had to embrace this whole digital divide and the digital disruption,
Instruction.
which you have talked about in a lot of your new conferences, but I still think that content is king, or sorry, I should say content is queen. And possibly digitization is the swaggering king who thinks he can make a mark like that. But basically, your knowledge base has to be good, your content has to be solid, and only then can you move to the next level. This is
Yes,
the
yes.
uh, message, let us say, that I try to give a lot of the younger people, my students. They find it very, very easy to say that, now we're doing a lot of PR through social media. By all means, do it. But don't forget that it's also got to have a huge knowledge base.
So we can take it. If you can change yourself, you can change others. But if your mental blockage is there, if you think that it is the final thing, I will not change myself, you cannot change others' mind. So my third point that, of course, it is from Rita Bhimani's journey, and I'll be reminding, she will think that Soumyajit is embarrassing me. Yes, I want to embarrass you. Because if we embarrass you, the thing, what will come out of you, that will be all learning. How you answer, that the new education, new generation will listen and learn, to have patience and to answer those fiery questions. Though I'm not doing fiery questions, that is now comes ideation. I think in Rita Bhimani's career, the first big ideation came the Mughal Monarch Ghazal Talent Contest, and the rest will be from Rita Bhimani.
Okay, in my early years of running Rhythm Communications, we started something very, very interesting. It was a concept called a Ghazal Talent Contest. And there was a brand called Mughal Monarch, which came from Shaw Wallace. So they were very keen to do this thing with us. And we got entries from all over India. In those days, people used to send in cassettes. And we asked them just to record a particular ghazal, not professionally, they could record it in their own homes. And we got Rajendra and Neena Mehta as they were the two judges who judged all these various cassettes that came into us. And there was Asha Audio who partnered us. Asha Audio's founder is no more, but she was a very, very dynamic personality. Yes. So what happened was we got all these wonderful entries and we had a wonderful time listening to all of them. The strange thing was that a lot of the very, very good ghazal singers actually came from South India, which was strange, and it was quite a revelation to us. Anyway, some substance of this was it was an all India contest. We had huge ads in the papers, and we had the contests in various cities like Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi. And the finals, naturally, because the company was headquartered in Calcutta, we had the finals in Calcutta. And the person who got it, the one who won it, is still singing till this day, which is very interesting. He's still singing ghazals, Mr. Bhutta. So that was the interesting part of it, that it was a very, very big project for us. But the sad thing, what I'd like to point out to entrepreneurs is, why didn't I repeat it every year? It should have become an annual contest. It should have been something that became a brand for that company and an event that was branded. So I would say that I failed over there not to take it forward. It could have been wonderful. It could have still been running.
You're the signature event. Yes. We will go to another place, that is right place, right time. And if you do not do the right walk in right place, you will not get the result. So, Sparta Matrix, an international client, how Rita Bhimani handled, then it will justify my question.
Yes, I think sometimes it's a matter of luck, being at the right place at the right time, but you also have to look presentable all the time. I would say that. And this particular time, I was actually traveling business class. Obviously, when you're traveling business class, you're also pretty decently dressed and all that. And I had this person sitting next to me. First, of course, in the lounge itself, we started talking. You know how you start talking to people, 3 or 4 people there, and everyone chats. And then once we got on the flight, I found this gentleman sitting next to me. So obviously, everyone asks, we all ask one another, what do you do? And what are you here for? Why did you come to India? And this gentleman said that I'm setting up a tracking system. And it is a very specialized tracking system for cars and for ships and everything else. And I'm actually looking for someone who will help me in my public relations in this country, and will also build my image in India. So then I started telling him, well, this is what I do. I run my own PR consultancy. He said, would you like to look at it? Would you be interested? And this is how this whole conversation, and obviously 2 hours on a flight, there's a lot of things you can exchange. And once we landed, he got in touch. And my first assignment was a major car rally, which went all the way from Guwahati right up to Singapore. It covered so many countries, and all using their particular tracking system. So that's how it started building their brand in India. And then this gentleman was so interesting. He had a legal person, a finance person, a technical person, and himself, and me as the PR person. He put us all on his board. So we started having our board meetings in Singapore, in Thailand, in Malaysia, even in England. And he had a whole lot of investors who had come in. So the times were very interesting, that not only are you a consultant to a company, but you also get on the board of their company. And interacting with these people, one person was from New Zealand, one from South Africa, one from the States, and then there was me, and this gentleman was an American. So it was a heady mix of people from different countries, different cultures. And this was pretty early on in my consultancy. So it went well for many, many years.
Rita Bhimani wrote so many books, wrote books on PR. The question will go to her. What influenced you to write a book on PR? But before that, I have an interesting thing for our listeners. Doing a book jointly with Kishore Bhimani titled Portraits of the Game. And this was also a memorable journey in Rita Bhimani's career, I think, and doing a book jointly with spouse. So, Rita, please.
Okay, so we are doing the joint one first. Not bad, because this was something that was commissioned by a gentleman called Shyam Bhatia from Dubai. And he told my husband that I'd like you to do a book where you will talk about 60 of the world's best one-day cricketers. And you will interview these people and get their special story, one special story about one special innings in their life, which they valued most. And you will put it in the pages of this book that I intend to highly illustrate and so on. So my husband told him, okay, fine, this sounds very interesting, but how will we cover so many countries? He said, you will travel at my cost. You will go to these various countries and you will meet the cricketers. Then, of course, my husband said, well, I think I'd like to involve my wife in this. She will also travel with me. He said, why not? She's also a writer. Let her do it. So we went to so many parts of the world. It was so exciting. Now, some of the cricketers maybe said only a few words and we would have to flesh it out. Others talked a lot. Some were very friendly. Some didn't want to talk. But on the whole, it turned out to be absolutely marvelous. I would do various interviews also, so we would divide it up. But he is the one who did all the writing, actually, as it happens. And then the illustrations was very interesting. That's what I take credit for, because I was in Cape Town and I came across this person who had done a marvelous watercolor of Jaunty Rhodes taking a catch. And I said, who has done this? And they said, well, this is an artist from Cape Town. Would you like to meet him? And I was sitting in somebody's office and he said, I'll give him a call. And this guy came across the next day. I met him and I said, look, we are doing this book of 60 of the world's best one-day cricketers. And this man turned out to be also a cricketer himself, but he was also actually an illustrator and a painter. And would you like to illustrate it through your watercolors? And he said, why not? So I had to tell the person who was actually bankrolling the whole book from Dubai. I said, I found this artist. Would you like him to do what I told him that we'd like to do? And he said, yes, ask him to come to Dubai. So he went, he played a weekend of golf there, and they signed and sealed the deal for him to do all the illustrations. And these books have come out marvelously. The first one was actually released in South Africa and then subsequently in various other parts of the world. So we've had 5 editions. The latest edition, by the way, let me tell you, my son is working on a lot of the new cricketers and he's doing some of the interviews now.
Wonderful. I don't know, Rita Bhimani is writing books, and we will obviously come in 2020, the book titled PR 2020. And of course, the latest release, most probably on 21st, I do not remember the exact date, it was a Moga. So, in our discussion, hopefully these 2 books will come. So, Rita, your take on how you got influenced in writing PR books, and start with the PR 2020.
Actually, may I start with the very first book? That was something that I couldn't believe. Okay. I got a letter from Rupa, just out of the blue. They said, will you write a book on PR? Just like that, one line. And I wrote back one line to say I would be delighted. And that's how the first book, The Corporate Peacock, came about.
Yes, yes.
That went into 2 editions. Then the next book, Face Up, happened because you have to keep updating books. You can't just live on one book, not in a profession like public relations. Then the third, PR 2020, had to happen. And that happened. It didn't happen in 2020. It happened a couple of years earlier. But this again is a refinement on the earlier books. Of course, there is a lot more on digital PR, no question. But it also covers success stories of people who have been entrepreneurs and who have made a mark in their particular fields. That's also there. So it covers quite a bit. And I think the students have taken it very well. We've had lots of readings and lots of sessions at various media colleges with PR 2020. And of
Yes.
course, I was delighted to get a foreword by Shashi Tharoor, and he really wrote it from the heart. He read several chapters and then he wrote it.
Rita, if you allow, we will have a 20 seconds break and we'll again come back.
Sure.
Namaskar, Soumyajit welcomes you to Face to Face Soumyajit. If you like our show, please visit Face to Face Soumyajit, like it and share it. Also, subscribe our YouTube channel iCommunications. Press the bell icon to get instant notifications.
Thank you. We will come back to Rita. The next question is, I think, on the latest release. It is not a book only. It is a social walk. It is something which changed the mindset of people. It is something which helped to regain the glory of some culture. So your take on this, Rita.
When my friend Shampa Das asked me to write about this, she was actually trying to revive Muga saris, and she's been doing that for the last 30 years. And I've also been writing about her various exhibitions and so on. But she finally said that let's put it all in a book, because let people know all about the richness of this textile and how I have also tried to go to the village, the weaving village of Sualkuchi, and try to inspire the weavers to look at new ways of weaving, not to get away from the traditional designs, but just to infuse them with something that's fresh, new ideas, and to push them also into doing a lot of the unique weaves that they're doing, because they tend to be very laid back people, and that's where it needed somebody of her dynamism to push it. And when I came to it 2 years ago, we actually went to the village, we talked to the weavers, and of course I had to read a lot of books on Assam, on the history of Assam, on the long 600-year reign of the Ahoms, and it was quite fascinating. So it was a total shift away from one's own profession into looking at something which is a tradition in our country, and to deal with something that's entirely different, to look at something that beautifies women. These were things that were a challenge for me, and were also interesting for me as a woman, naturally. So that's how it got written. And let me tell you that we did most of the designing throughout the lockdown.
Good. Yeah, that's the thing. But PR personality, PR profession, PR conferences, we cannot let it be unnoticed. Rita Bhimani, to Rita Bhimani, my next question, any particular conference which you have been associated with organizing that have made their mark? And when you were inducted into the board of directors of IPRA?
That itself was exciting. Getting inducted into IPRA on the board, because I was the first Asian to be inducted like that. I hate to use these words, first Asian. It's like, being the first monkey on the moon or something like that, but not that. It's just that I felt it was quite an honor. And this happened in Melbourne, where most of the directors, all the directors, in fact, were men. So they brought their wives, and I said, well, I would like to bring my spouse as well. So he came along with me, and it was a beautiful trip. Uh, we stayed at one of the Oberoi hotels in Melbourne, which was beautiful, old world charm and all that. And that's where the conference happened. That's where the induction happened. And another wonderful thing was that year, we actually brought out a supplement in the Telegraph. And the Telegraph were good enough to get the supplement ready in time. And I was able to take it all the way to Melbourne and distribute it to everyone with a one-page supplement on public relations in India. So it was really quite a historic moment to do that. And the other conference that I'm particularly proud of is something we call CalVision. CalVision was held, I want to try and remember, I think it was in 1998.
In Science City.
Is that right?
I do not remember the year, but it was in Science City.
It was in Science City. It was in Science City in 1998. And internationally, it was so strong and content-wise, so very deep. Do you know, and at that time, we had 400 delegates, which was something of a record for that time. Now you have done a lot of conferences, so you know, you've had a lot of people coming. But what was interesting there was that apart from public relations professionals, there were experts from the field of advertising, there were management consultants, there were brand building agencies, journalists, professors, CEOs, economists, IAS officers. It was an amazing mix of people. And what was also very satisfying for me personally was that on my personal invitation, people came from different parts of the world, from Bangladesh, from Singapore. They came, they didn't charge me anything. They just came at their own expense, but just one phone call from me and they were here. And the same thing happened in those days with the CEOs and the other people I approached. It was just one phone call and they agreed. It is such a different matter today. I know, Shomo, you have a personal rapport with a lot of people and you're able to do this today. But in 1998, I now recall that people were very open and they were actually eager to come to a conference like this and to speak at a conference like this. And the other takeaway from that was that we brought out a very, very interesting journal which actually had the transcripts of everyone who spoke, and it's still with me. It's a very, very important document because there we talked about accountability, transparency, corporate ethics, the new information superhighway, perception management, things that were new at that time, but they continue to vibrate even today. And there was, in fact, something ominous in a statement by one of the speakers, and I wrote that down. He said, a lot of people can talk about what PR can do for business, but I can tell you what you can do for survival. My God, he could have been talking in COVID times.
Wonderful. I told the beginning that journey of Rita Bhimani cannot be written through this show within 60 minutes. But some exciting thing, as a change maker, she told so many things which can impact the youth, which can impact people in the industry, and that is why she is here, she's staying back for several years. So the next thing she referred that during lockdown, she did something and the result came about Muga book. And I think during lockdown, apart from writing this Muga book or doing illustration, thinking over Muga book, something exciting for the students, something exciting for the society she might have done, or something exciting for the forthcoming books. So if you have anything, what you have thought during the lockdown, we could change the lives of people in the coming future, if you kindly say a few things.
One doesn't want to reveal too much, but yes, I
Okay,
have been
okay.
writing two small books, two small, not how to do, but things that might impact on young people or even on the layperson. And I've finished 50% of the writing of both of these things. So let us see how it
Okay.
goes. I've discussed a little with you also about it.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't talk too much about the title
Yeah, I
because that's
understand.
giving
Yeah.
away, let it be a surprise. But
Let it,
that
let some
writing has,
curiosity be there.
yes, let it be there. But
Yeah.
that writing has parallelly been going on. You
Yes, yes.
have to keep doing that because lockdown actually has been a very good opportunity to do a lot of introspection uh, and to be able to concentrate more on whatever one is doing, whether it's writing, whether it is getting the house ship shape or getting yourself into some kind of shape. All of it has probably helped us trying to stay safe, trying to stay indoors, but in the process also being able to have a lot of think time.
Right, exactly. I think we could discover something about Rita Bhimani, the change-making process, the way she impacted people's mindset. But I think we should discuss a little bit about her ancestry. Her ancestry can be traced back to Pandit Shivnath Shastri, her great-great-grandfather. Her great-great-grandmother, Timala Pasarkar, founded the Maharani Girls' Schools in Darjeeling 115 years ago. It is still running. Yes, the rest of the things from Rita Bhimani's mouth.
So here, of course, it's all about inheriting something wonderful. Um, I shouldn't take any credit for it, but there you are. To think of my great great grandmother, who was an educator, who started the school, as you've said, and it's still running today. But in those days, she had to struggle because the British didn't allow Indian students into their institutions. So she said, why? Fine. I will go ahead and make my own school. And she went, why it was called Maharani Girls' School is she went to three Maharanis of Kuch Bihar, and Mayurbhanj and Burdwan, and they gave the money for it, and that's how she started. Still there, it's a beautiful school. I went there 2 or 3 years ago, and they were absolutely delighted that I could actually go and visit them, and there were 450 students that they had on their rolls. So that was there. My grandmother was also a writer, and so was my mother. So the writing gene perhaps came down through them. But remember that they were writing in another era, and possibly the challenges were greater for them. It's so much easier for us to do things now. So I salute all the women in my family who went through it, but they also inspired me.
Thank you, Rita. It's a great learning. We have gained so much knowledge today. And you saluted them, and I personally salute you and your profession. And with that, thank you very much, Rita Bhimani, for coming to face-to-face Soumyajit show. And with that, I'll be signing off for today. Good night. We will come back on every Wednesday at 7 p.m. with a change maker. Thank you, Rita Bhimani, and to somebody, it's only Rita.
Thank you, Soumyajit. You yourself are a change maker, so you have understood the whole essence of it.